I've watched the politicians. I've dealt with them all my life. If you can't make a good deal with a politician, then there's something wrong with you. You're certainly not very good. I want to make great deals. That's what it is, for the people. Everybody wants me to negotiate. That's what I'm known as a negotiator. We like to win. We know how to close deals. I close. I'm a closer. Even in sports, I've always been a closer. I win.
President Trump often brags about his deal-making acumen, but it hasn't gotten him far in the government shutdown standoff with Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats. The New York Times spoke to former longtime Trump Organization executive Barbara Rez, who says Speaker Pelosi is a new challenge for Donald Trump. Quote, one blind spot, she observed, was that Mr. Trump believes he's better than anyone who ever lived and saw even the most capable of women as easy to run over. But there was never a woman with power that he ran up against until Pelosi, she said, and he doesn't know what to do with it. He's totally in a corner. Joining us now, Barbara Rez. She was a vice president for the Trump Organization for almost 20 years. She's also the author of All Alone on the 68th Floor, How One Woman Changed the Face of Construction. It's a pleasure to have you here. So talk about the bad deals and the shortcomings in terms of deal making, because he's put his own spin on this, but it's not reality.
Yeah, you know, I'm a mediator, and I've been so for many, many years, and I sort of teach negotiation as part of that job. And there are certain basic tenets to negotiation that Trump does not believe in. And Michael D'Antonio put it very well. Trump was asked about a win-win situation when you do a deal, and Trump said, no, I want an I-win situation. And that is so very telling. I love that quote, because actually that's what he's about. He knows nothing about collaboration. He doesn't go into approach a deal from the point of view of what can I give you to make you happy so that I can get what I want. He goes in with, I demand, and this is what I'm going to get. And it has worked for him in certain circumstances where he had all the leverage. Like my experience with him mostly in deal making is making deals with contractors and architects and things like that. And of course he had all the leverage. In one case he had the money. Another case he had the ability to sue, which will kill a contractor. Another case he had the best jobs, which the architect will want at any cost. So he always had the power and the leverage. Now he's doesn't have either.
What do you think it is about Nancy Pelosi? I loved your comment that he's never run up against a woman with power, and she doesn't just have power. She has all the things you just described. She has dealt with Mile Boss, or she has made deals. She has made big deals, and she's made deals where she's certainly come out ahead. But she understands everything you just described. She understands how to compromise.
Well, you know what he said: if you can't make a deal with a politician, you can't make a deal. What was he saying? That was such an insult to politicians. The implication being, number one, that the deals he made with politicians were politicians that he had in his pocket, and that's, you know, sort of to quote him. And the other thing is that, you know, they don't know how to make deals. That's all they do is make deals. It's anathema to the actual truth of what happens when you're dealing with people and you have to come to a settlement. So, no, he doesn't know from this. And then being a woman, you know, Trump has always felt that men are superior to women. He even told me that. He'd say, a good woman is better than 10 good men. And he meant it as this enormous compliment, because he thought that women were inferior. So in his mind, any woman would be inferior to him, even the best of the best. And here's Nancy Pelosi. She probably is the best of the best. Problem is, she's his match. She is not inferior to him. She is, in my opinion, from a point of view of deal making, far superior.
I believe everything you're saying, and you've got the insight to know that it's true. It's certainly what you intuit when you watch him, but it's terrifying. How is this person going to navigate our foreign policy to begin with if he can't sit down and make a deal with anybody?
Well, you know, because he is negotiating our foreign policy, and you can see who knows what kind of deal he's made with Putin, but he seems to, you know, go along with whatever Putin says. And, you know, you can see his approach to Kim initially, you know, Rocket Man, and now he says he's got love with him. I mean, it's just, there's no, he plays it all right off the hip. He thinks on the spot, and most of the time his thinking is flawed. And here he is dealing with these people. Look at what he's doing to the country right now. It is 100% in his power to stop the shutdown. He can't see that. He doesn't see the value of the shutdown. All he sees is the wall. And he is so blinded by his ego and the fact that he went out on a limb for the wall, that as he realized that he could go out on a limb now and save the country, or save the economy, whatever, save people's jobs, save the government. He could do that right now by going out on a limb and saying, okay, we have to make a compromise here. I am the bigger man. They are holding us up. I can fix it. And then do that. But I don't think he will.
Has he ever, in any instance you've ever witnessed, said, I'm the bigger man?
Oh, no. I mean, he always says he's the bigger man, but no, he's never done anything that would be indicative of that he would take a position that would be the higher road, so to speak.
So how does this end?
I don't know. I think eventually somebody is going to have to blink in terms of making an offer less than what he asked for the wall or more than nothing, which is what they're willing to pay. Now, if the Democrats come up and say, okay, we will take that million, we'll dedicate it to your wall, and Trump says no, I think he is going to be in very big trouble.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.